Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Before I Go podcast. Can you believe that it has been 2 whole years since the world shut down? 2 years ago, March 2020, they told us it would be about 8 weeks and things would be back to normal. Clearly, that was not the case, and what followed was unprecedented. Sheltering in place, mask or no mask, toilet paper shortages, getting groceries delivered, church was online. It was scary. It was overwhelming. People everywhere were employing different types of coping mechanisms. Some relationships ended, others thrived. Some folks gained weight because the gyms were closed, and others rallied and worked out from home. Some picked up new hobbies like baking bread or podcasting, while others just waited with their fingers crossed, hoping for this whole thing to just be over. Well, 2 years later, and it still isn't completely over. Things have certainly gotten better, at least in my neck of the woods. Mask mandates have been relaxed, and for the first time in 2 years, I'm not wearing a mask to work and actually wearing lipstick again. It's the little things. I've been vaccinated and boosted, and I'm feeling safer in my environment. There are places where I still wear a mask, and I'm optimistically cautious. I don't believe things will ever go back to normal, meaning I don't think we will operate in the exact same way as we did pre-pandemic. And maybe in some ways that's a good thing. For example, we're no longer having potlucks at the job. Again, it's the little things. I think we can all agree that the past 2 years have been scary. Traumatic for some, overwhelming for most. The question is, how do you recover from this kind of trauma, from this kind of overwhelm? In my opinion, and I'm not a trauma expert, I think the first step is to identify that the trauma even exists. One of the things that I discovered in therapy is that even if you don't consciously acknowledge the trauma, your body and mind still knows that trauma has taken place. My therapist recommended a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which essentially talks about how overwhelming experiences affect the development of brain, mind, and body awareness. It's not a bad thing to admit that the past 2 years was traumatizing. At the onset of the pandemic, I had a church community that I was part of, a running group that I was part of, and a small group of work friends. I enjoyed dining out and going to the movies and traveling. To have all of that taken away at once is traumatic, even for a textbook introvert like myself. As an introvert, I'm able to control my interactions and choose them carefully. I don't need personal interaction to survive like an extrovert might. I choose to interact, but when that choice was taken away from me, it had me feeling some kind of way. As I said, things have gotten better, but they are not the same, and that can be considered a good thing or a bad thing depending on your perspective. My relationship ended during the pandemic, which in the big picture was a good thing. I also stopped drinking during the pandemic, which was definitely a good thing. I'm back to running with my group, and I'm also in the gym more. A lot of my church community has not returned and have opted to worship online. I still haven't really returned to restaurants like I want to, but I'm cooking more at home, which is better for my health and my bank account. Last year, I even allowed myself to do some traveling in the summer and on my birthday. See, even for the most resilient person, coming back from overwhelm can be a challenge, and that's okay. Trying to rush the process will only lead to frustration and setbacks. Not too long ago, we thought we were all okay, and boom, a new COVID variant hit the streets. So take your time and give yourself plenty of grace as you decide to walk into the world again. In the meantime, I'll share a few things that I did and do to manage the overwhelm. I acknowledge when I'm feeling overwhelmed instead of trying to brush it off and power through. I'm done being Superwoman. I allow myself to do nothing if I want. This gives me the opportunity to reset. I meditate almost daily. Meditation does not have to be this complicated, scary thing. All it takes is for you to find a quiet place and just sit. If you're new to meditation, start with a few minutes and just breathe. I find it helpful to simply count each inhalation and exhalation. Focus on the breath and the counting. That's it. And I'm certain with consistency, you will notice a difference in how calm you feel. I'd like to spend more time outside. I love sitting on my patio when the weather is nice and just have a meal or read a book. I have reduced my screen time considerably, and I've talked about this in a previous episode, and it has been a huge help. When I think about the past and times when I really felt anxious or overwhelmed, like when I was pregnant, or when I was going through a divorce, or when I was waiting to hear about a job, or waiting to hear back from a doctor, all those experiences have one thing in common. Those feelings of anxiety and overwhelm did not last forever. Whatever the situation was, I got through it. And this always brings me back to one of my favorite Bible verses that I've shared on this podcast several times, and it comes from Romans, the 8th chapter, the 18th verse, and it simply says, "The sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the future glory that shall be revealed in us." So whatever bad thing is happening now, it can't be compared to the good things that are on the way. We all get overwhelmed at times, and I'm not trying to minimize what you're going through. Just know that it won't last forever, and better times are coming. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening. But before I go, let me share this with you from Paulo Coelho. Everything will be okay in the end. If it isn't okay, it isn't the end. I'll see you next time.